is that I have to live it for me and my children and my family.
Fantasia Barrino said those words with a faint smile, but behind them lay a hell she had once been dragged through. At 41, the R&B queen who once brought America to tears on the stage of American Idol shocked the public when she revealed, "I lost everything. And what they did to me was the cruelest thing." Just a few years after reaching the height of fame, Fantasia nearly lost her life. People saw her win a Grammy performing under dazzling lights, but no one knew she had been tricked into signing a contract while still unable to read, had been taken to court by her own father, and had once lain silently in a hospital bed after a night when she tried to end it all. Who were they? Who stripped the American dream from a young black woman who once inspired millions? Don't look away. What happened to Fantasia at 41 is a heartbreaking truth you've never heard before. Watch until the end so you don't miss the most shocking part. The pain from family and innocence. Exploited Fantasia Barrino once said, "I can forgive strangers, but to forgive those within my own family, I had to sacrifice my entire youth." At 41, looking back on her journey, she doesn't name public opinion contracts or the media as the cruelest forces, but rather the silent betrayal that began in the place she once believed was safest home. Before the stage lights, before the chart-topping hits or prestigious awards, Fantasia's life was already a steep uphill battle. Born in 1984 in High Point, North Carolina, a small town with big limitations, Fantasia grew up in poverty in a harsh environment. As a little girl, she experienced material and emotional deprivation. She later described her childhood as full of things that made me grow up too soon, but also made me fear the world. As a teenager, Fantasia experienced a traumatic incident at school, one she never publicly detailed, but described as what made me feel like school was no longer a place for me. Following that, she dropped out before finishing high school, carrying with her a deep void both in knowledge and trust. At 17, she gave birth to her daughter Zion and began the journey of single motherhood while still being barely more than a girl herself. What made Fantasia's path even more challenging was an unexpected truth: she couldn't read or write fluently. She later admitted to being functionally illiterate, unable to fully comprehend everyday written materials. So when opportunity knocked with American Idol, in 2004 she carried not only a dream of survival, but a fear of being exposed. During the competition, she memorized lyrics by listening repeatedly and pretended to read the words, when in truth she was learning by ear and feeling them with her heart. After winning at age 19, Fantasia was hailed as a symbol of strength and became a rising star, quickly signed by record labels and media agencies. Her debut album, Free Yourself, released in 2004, sold over 1.8 million copies, earned 4 Grammy nominations, and made her one of the most talked about young artists in the industry. But with success came a brutal reality. Fantasia lacked the tools to protect herself. She signed numerous contracts for Music Image Rights TV without fully understanding them, simply because she couldn't read them thoroughly. And those who were supposed to protect her, the lawyers, managers, and even family friends, didn't. She gave them her trust, and they took away her control. But the worst didn't come from the entertainment world. The worst came from her own father. In 2006, just 2 years after she became a household name, her father, Joseph Barrino, filed a $10 million lawsuit against her. He accused her autobiography, Life is Not a Fairy Tale, of defaming his character and damaging his reputation. Fantasia was devastated. In the book, she had recalled some painful memories: how he didn't support her musical dreams, how he had once asked for financial help when she first found fame. But in her eyes, these were honest reflections. She never imagined that the man she respected would respond with a courtroom summons. "That hurt me more than any cruel headline," she later said. "I wasn't sad about the lawsuit. I was sad that the father I loved, the one I thought would be proud of me, saw me as just a walking wallet." It wasn't just emotional damage. The lawsuit deepened Fantasia's financial struggles. She had to pay legal fees, handle media fallout, and continue supporting a large extended family people she had carried on her back with everything she had. At that time, she was only 22, drained of both money and trust. "I made a lot of money, but I used it to support everyone. And no one ever taught me to save anything for myself," she admitted on Fantasia for Real. To the public, she was a star. At home, she was the provider, the problem solver. No one asked if she was okay. Only calls for help came and criticism when she couldn't give more. When she herself began to struggle, she realized that even family love could come with conditions. What made the pain linger even longer was that she didn't dare speak out. If she did, the media would scream Fantasia turns her back on her family. If she stayed silent, she continued to suffer. In the end, she chose to keep it in. But that silence festered, sowing the seeds of future breakdowns. People often say there's a price for fame. But for Fantasia, the first price she paid didn't come from the spotlight. It came from the very arms she thought would hold her. When they began to hurt her, not with fists, not with the press, but with contracts she couldn't understand, and a lawsuit from her own blood, the road ahead offered no way back. The 19-year-old girl had to learn to survive in a battlefield where trust had already been shattered. And this was only the beginning. Fame, the dark side of the spotlight. When someone is hurt by those closest to them, they often seek salvation elsewhere. For Fantasia Barrino, the stage once seemed like that refuge. It was where she lifted her voice and silenced America, where she was hailed as a symbol of rising above hardship. After all the wounds from her family, she believed that singing and being recognized would make the pain disappear. But what Fantasia didn't know was that the outside world wasn't made for those who were too innocent. And the stage once believed to be her spotlight became the very place where the light was so blinding she couldn't see the shadows waiting to pull her down. After winning American Idol in 2004, Fantasia went straight from a modest life in North Carolina to the heart of the American music industry. At just 19, she became the media's darling, courted by major industry players, featured on magazine covers, talk shows, and red carpets. Her debut album, Free Yourself, released that same year, was a hit, selling over 1.8 million copies, reaching the Billboard Top 10 and earning her 4 Grammy nominations. She even published her memoir Life Is Not a Fairy Tale 2005 and starred as herself in the Lifetime movie adaptation. Many believed she had truly made it. But there was one thing: Fantasia had never been prepared for the price of rising too fast. She once compared herself to a little girl dropped into a game with no one to explain the rules. In an interview, Fantasia recalled, "I only knew how to sing. Beyond that, I didn't understand the system, the contracts, the media. I just wanted to sing. And I thought everyone wanted the best for me." Sadly, the entertainment industry does not run on goodwill. Right after her debut success, the record label pressured her to release a second album within less than 2 years. Though the next album was well produced, it sold only half as many copies. Fantasia was quickly labeled as losing momentum or lacking staying power despite tirelessly touring and recording. No longer the golden girl, she noticed the phone calls slowing, managers growing distant, and endorsement deals drying up. This was Fantasia's harsh introduction to a brutal industry truth: once you stop generating profit, you're left behind. No one told her to rest. No one taught her how to build a long-term career. They only pushed, drained, and walked away. Rumors circulated that even Clive Davis, the music mogul who once championed her, had quietly pulled back support when her sales dipped. In fan forums, theories emerged that Fantasia had been pushed out of the game quietly but deliberately. She never named anyone, but when asked about the feeling of being abandoned, she simply said, "That's when I realized no one was truly on my side." And then came another blow, not professional this time, but personal and very public. In 2010, Fantasia went public with a relationship with Antoine Cook, a man who was still legally married. The scandal broke when Antoine's wife, Paula Cook, filed for divorce and publicly accused Fantasia of being the other woman. Worse, Paula threatened to sue under the alienation of affection law, which allows a spouse to sue a third party for interfering in a marriage. The media pounced, labeling Fantasia with harsh words like homewrecker and interloper. The once celebrated girl who overcame adversity image crumbled overnight. Online, she was bombarded with hate comments. The public no longer saw her as an artist, but as a symbol of moral failure. Even though Antoine later admitted his marriage was already broken before meeting Fantasia, it didn't stop the backlash. Fantasia virtually disappeared from the spotlight for a while, not due to a lack of opportunities, but because she didn't have the strength to face the world. Once again, her innocence became her downfall. She had loved sincerely, but society doesn't tolerate complicated paths. And again, they, the media, the public, the industry, made her pay a steep price. In 2013, a social media post added fuel to the fire. Fantasia wrote, "They legalize everything else, but still discriminate against me." The post was widely misinterpreted as anti-LGBTQ, plus sparking outrage from a community that had long supported her. Fantasia quickly clarified that she had no intention of expressing any bias, she was merely commenting on the injustices she faced. Still, the damage was done, and she was once again caught in a media firestorm. That is the nature of the spotlight, it lifts you up, but waits for your fall. And for Fantasia, each fall wasn't just a hit to her fame, it left a lasting psychological scar. She once said, "I thought the spotlight would heal me, but sometimes it blinded me so much, I couldn't tell who was my friend and who was using me." Behind the awards, the performances, and the headlines was a young woman navigating a world she was never taught to survive in. The glory was real, but so was the shadow it cast. And Fantasia Barrino, throughout the early years of her career, had to stumble through that darkness alone without a guide, a map, or even a safe place to fall. And that was only half the truth. The scars from her family, the contracts, the media, they were all accumulating, pushing her closer and closer to the edge. Until one day she let go in an act that shocked the world. The fall with no way out, and the moment she nearly left forever. When someone is pushed down over and over again without a single hand reaching out to lift them up, there comes a moment when they believe falling freely is the only way to end it all. For Fantasia Barrino, that moment didn't come after one big shock, but rather after countless small silent wounds that accumulated over time. Until one day in mid-August 2010, she sat alone in her room, stared into the darkness ahead, and thought, "I'm just too tired." When the public shifted from praise to condemnation, when her family, once her refuge, became a source of relentless pressure, and when love turned into a wound instead of a safe haven, Fantasia slipped into what doctors call major depressive disorder. But for her, it was simply a feeling of numbness, physically and emotionally. No one left to trust, nowhere to hide, no tomorrow to hope for. In the 3 days leading up to the incident, she had all but vanished from the world. Her loved ones said she locked herself in her room, didn't answer. Calls, didn't eat, didn't respond to anyone. Zion, her young daughter, was sent to stay with relatives so she wouldn't witness her mother's deteriorating state. The once music-filled house was silent. No music, no TV, no singing, no crying. Just Fantasia, still and alone, swallowed by a darkness thicker than the night beyond her window. On August 9th, 2010, Fantasia took a bottle of pills, walked into her closet, shut the door, and sat down. In an interview on VH1's Behind the Music, she recounted that moment in a chillingly calm voice. "I looked in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the person staring back. I didn't see a singer. I didn't see a mother. I didn't see the girl who had fought. I just saw someone who was exhausted." She swallowed every pill in the bottle, a mix of aspirin and sleeping pills, hoping to fall into the deepest sleep and never wake up again. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a reckless impulse. Fantasia confirmed it was intentional, conscious, and deliberate. "No one accidentally swallows an entire bottle of pills," she said. "I knew what I was doing. I just didn't want to feel anything anymore." What makes this moment so haunting even today isn't just that Fantasia was a star, it's that many of those who once praised her were part of the reason she was driven to the edge. She said, "I was tired of being treated badly, over and over. By family, by people I loved, by those who said they'd protect me. They all turned their backs." After countless moments of being used, demanded from, and hurt, she said her mind felt like it was about to explode. "I didn't want to fight anymore. I couldn't see any reason to keep going. I had nothing left to hold on to." Luckily, Fantasia was found in time and rushed to the hospital. When she arrived, she was in a deep coma. Doctors had to pump her stomach to save her life. No one knew if she would wake up, but 2 days later, on August 11th, Fantasia opened her eyes. And the first person she thought of was her daughter. "I cried. Not because I was scared, but because I knew I still had a chance. I could still hold my child. I could still make things right." The incident quickly made headlines across the US media. Initially, it was reported as an accidental overdose, but Fantasia herself came forward to confirm it was a suicide attempt, not a mistake. "I want people to know that I was once too tired to go on, not for sympathy, but so those who feel the same know they're not alone." That truth rocked the nation. The media outlets that had previously torn her down over her love life suddenly changed tone. For the first time, they stopped treating her like a scandal and started seeing her as a victim of the crushing pressure the entertainment industry often imposes. Articles, talk shows, and podcasts began discussing artists' mental health, the dangers of sudden fame, and the cost of having to perform perfection every day in front of the world. Fans who had once criticized her began to understand. Comments shifted from "cancel her and she deserved it" to "stay strong." "We're sorry, and we didn't understand." For perhaps the first time, Fantasia felt like she wasn't being viewed as a product, but as a human being hurting and hoping to heal. But more powerful than anything was how Fantasia chose to face that past after surviving. She didn't hide it. She didn't deny it. She didn't mask it. She told the story in full honesty, but without despair, because to her silence is what truly kills. And she never wanted anyone else to walk through that same darkness alone. Instead of letting the pain bury her past, Fantasia made it part of her healing journey. She shared her experience in interviews, workshops, and fan events. She encouraged people to reach out for help, seek therapy, and speak their truth. She once said, "I'm not ashamed that I fell. I'm proud that I survived." From that point on, Fantasia was no longer a celebrity haunted by scandal. She became a symbol of rebirth for anyone who's ever fallen and chosen not to give up. And that near-fatal night, it didn't end her story. It began a new chapter, one of truth, confrontation, and hope. She no longer hid her pain behind the lights. She turned the cracks into light for others to find their way out of the dark. And that's something they could never take away. Not her voice, not her fame, but her courage to live truthfully after once believing she didn't deserve to exist. Fantasia is no longer a victim of the industry. She is living proof that even when you hit rock bottom, you can still rise if you're still breathing, still believing, and if anyone reaches out a hand. All it takes is one person. And the day she woke up in that hospital bed, that person was her daughter. And from that very moment, her life turned a page. Rising from the ashes, redemption, healing, and growth. Fantasia Barrino opened her eyes in the hospital on August 11, 2010. There were no stage lights, no music, no familiar cheers. Only the cold white of the ceiling, the urgent voices of nurses, and a dry burning in her throat. In that moment of awakening, she thought of one thing: her daughter. And right then, what seemed like an ending quietly became a turning point. "I'm grateful to still be alive," she said. "I still have a chance. There's still someone who needs me." Not everyone gets a second chance. Fantasia knew that deeply. She knew that if she kept going down the wrong path this time, there would be no one and nothing left to save her again. That's why she made the decision to start over, from zero, from the very place she thought she had lost everything. First, she stepped away from the stage, the shows, and the entertainment world, and chose the simplest thing to slow down. Her manager said that in the first weeks after leaving the hospital, Fantasia barely spoke, didn't give interviews, and posted nothing on social media. Instead, she spent time with her mother, her closest friends, and most importantly, with her daughter Zion, the one who had witnessed too much pain too early in life. In one conversation, Fantasia once said, "I used to hide sadness by laughing loud, working nonstop, and always being on the go. But this time, I chose to face it. I don't want my daughter to think that silence is how we solve things." To heal, she didn't just need time, she needed professional help. Fantasia began therapy. She sought mental health experts, joined counseling sessions, and learned to name her emotions instead of suppressing them. But the most admirable thing is that she didn't hide this. On the contrary, she openly shared with fans that she was in recovery and therapy and learning to love herself again. At the same time, she reconnected with her faith. Returning to church, the place that once gave her hope as a child, Fantasia spoke with pastors, prayed, and joined community gatherings. She didn't go to church to pray for fame or wealth. She went to find an anchor so she wouldn't be swept away again. One of the most symbolic steps in her process of rebuilding from scratch was her decision to go back to school. She enrolled in adult education, persistently learned to read and write, and sat for the GED, America's High School Equivalency Diploma. When she received her certificate, she cried. Not from joy, but from the feeling that she had finally defeated the biggest darkness in her life: illiteracy. "I used to sign contracts without even understanding the words," she said. "Now I want to know what I'm saying, what I'm writing. I don't want to be led blindly anymore." Financially, Fantasia cut ties with managers and agents who had been dishonest and replaced them with a new team, less flashy but more trustworthy. She started reviewing her assets, sold off unnecessary items, reduced expenses, and shifted to a simpler lifestyle. No more luxury cars to please others. No more endless gigs just to pay off debt. Fantasia began choosing what truly held value, from relationships to money. During this period, Fantasia released Back to Me 2010, just weeks after her suicide attempt. Many feared the public would turn away, but instead the audience embraced the album as a brave and honest confession. The song Bittersweet, filled with raw emotion about heartbreak and internal struggle, quickly gained attention and won her the Grammy in 2011 for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance. Fantasia didn't need to explain herself. She let the music speak. After her deepest fall, what Fantasia learned wasn't how to stand up quickly, it was how to forgive. To forgive the family that hurt her, to forgive the men who left her halfway, but most importantly, to forgive herself for once believing she wasn't worthy of living. She said, "I used to look in the mirror and hate that person. But now I see a woman who walked through fire, still standing, still singing." After 2011, Fantasia began to evolve into a new version of herself, not the young woman being pushed around by life, but one who actively chose her direction. She began speaking at inspirational events, sharing her healing journey, and talking openly about artists' mental health, something the industry had long avoided. She spoke to young people about recognizing depression, seeking help, and saying no to toxic relationships. One of her most moving quotes is, "You are not the product of what others do to you. You are the product of how you respond to it." Fantasia chose to respond by not giving up, not hiding, and not letting old wounds become prophecies for the future. That is the biggest lesson she wants to pass on. Of course, recovery wasn't always smooth. There were setbacks, mental dips, sleepless nights. But each time she returned to her three anchors: music, faith, and her daughter. Zion, the child born during the darkest days, has now become her reason to live better every day. Fantasia also began writing music not out of pressure to produce hits, but as a way to heal herself. Later albums like Side Effects of You 2013 and The Definition of 2016 were deeply personal, less commercial, but richer in emotional depth. She stopped chasing trends and started becoming a unique voice within them. Looking back on her journey since 2010, perhaps the thing Fantasia is proudest of isn't a Grammy or a successful album. It's that she dared to lift her head after once being consumed by despair. And if stage lights once blinded her now, the light comes from within, from scars that have healed, from falls that are no longer hidden, and from her own choice to live honestly, kindly, and intentionally. Fantasia Barrino at this stage doesn't need to be rescued anymore, because she has learned how to rescue herself. Love, at the right time, and a complete comeback. Perhaps no one understands the meaning of right timing better than Fantasia Barrino. Just when she seemed to have found herself again after the depths of depression, when old wounds had just begun to heal, when her career was slowly recovering, and her self-worth was being pieced back together, love came knocking. But not like in the movies, not loud or flashy like most celebrity romances. It was gentle, steady, the right person at the right time. That person was Kendall Taylor. They met in 2015. At that point, Fantasia was a 31-year-old woman who had seen it all. She no longer dreamed of princes rescuing princesses, nor did she romanticize whirlwind romances fueled by fame but lacking depth. She had loved, been hurt, been publicly shamed, and had fallen hard, and all she truly wanted was someone who understood her. Kendall Taylor wasn't a singer-actor or celebrity. He was a businessman, someone with a troubled past who had turned his life around through integrity and hard work. What made him different was that he wasn't drawn in by Fantasia's fame. What he saw was a woman who had fallen and found the courage to rise. And that's exactly what she saw in him too. Just 3 weeks into dating, Fantasia and Kendall decided to get married. No extravagant dress, no paparazzi, no sponsorship deals. They quietly filed for a marriage license at City Hall. A few days later, they held a small celebration on a yacht, not to show off, but to honor something meaningful. Fantasia had finally found someone who wanted to be with her, not with her status. Fantasia once said, "I don't need someone to promise they'll love me forever. I need someone who makes me believe I deserve to be loved." And Kendall was exactly that. He didn't try to fix her past, nor did he ignore the scars on her soul. On the contrary, he stood by her when she felt weakest, reminding her, "You don't have to be perfect to be loved." In an emotional interview, Fantasia shared, "I used to be the kind of woman who didn't know how to love anyone except my daughter. But he made me want to learn how to love myself first." Kendall called her queen not because she was famous, but because he believed she deserved to be cherished. And that reverence wasn't just in words. Kendall joined her in rebuilding her career. Together, they founded their own company, Rock Soul Entertainment, allowing Fantasia to release music independently, free from major label constraints and commercial distortion. From then on, she had full creative control what to sing, when to release it, and most importantly, the freedom to be herself in every note. Kendall was more than a life partner, he became her spiritual partner. When work became stressful, he reminded her to stay balanced. When old rumors resurfaced in the media, he anchored her to the present, where she was no longer the victim but the author of her own story. Even when tabloids once claimed Kendall had cheated, Fantasia didn't lose her composure. Instead of lashing out or shutting down, she chose conversation. "We've been through enough to understand that real love is action-based trust, not just words," she said. And indeed, the couple weathered the storms through honesty, no defensiveness, no manipulation, no one trying to win, just two people choosing to move forward together. Their family didn't look like the perfect model often featured on magazine covers, but it was a place of peace. Kendall had a son from a previous relationship. Fantasia had Zion, her daughter, and Dallas, born in 2011 from her relationship with Antoine Cook. And in 2021, something miraculous happened. After 3 years of trying, they welcomed their daughter Keziah. Fantasia had suffered a miscarriage and once believed she wouldn't be able to have another child. But they didn't give up. "Every time we were disappointed, we prayed," she said. Finally, Keziah arrived like a miracle, reinforcing their belief that good things don't always come early, but they do come right on time. Alongside music, building a family, and running a business, the couple co-authored a memoir titled No Crowns in the Castle 2022, an honest account of marriage struggles, seemingly irreconcilable differences, and how they maintained their love through faith, respect, and open communication. The book doesn't sugarcoat anything. It shows that real love isn't about the absence of storms, but how two people row the same boat through them. From this solid foundation, Fantasia entered a new chapter in her career, not hesitant, not trying to prove anything, but as an independent, confident, and creatively liberated artist. In 2023, Fantasia was cast as Celie in the film adaptation of The Color Purple, produced by Oprah Winfrey and Steven Spielberg. It wasn't just a major film role, it was symbolic of her journey toward authenticity and strength. Celie, like Fantasia, was a Black woman who endured injustice and found freedom and self-worth in the end. The role earned her a Golden Globe nomination in 2024, rightfully placing her back on the cinematic map. She also returned to the American Idol stage, delivering moving ballads and gospel performances like Have Your Way that brought the audience to tears. Fans no longer referred to her as Season 3 winner. They now called her the Queen Who Returned. The Fantasia of today is not just a singer, not just a mother, not just a woman who once stood at the edge of despair. She is a symbol of healing, of overcoming adversity with faith, love, and complete rebirth. She didn't just rise, she rose with her head held high, no longer singing to prove a point. Now she sings to live, to love, and to inspire those who once believed they couldn't survive. And that not the awards is the greatest anthem of Fantasia Barrino's life. Fantasia Barrino's story is living proof that no matter how deep your wounds run, there is always a way back. Not everyone survives what Fantasia went through, but she didn't just survive, she came back shining. If you believe this journey deserves to be shared, hit like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more real-life stories that touch the heart. Because maybe, just maybe, what you hear today could save someone tomorrow.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.